Hi and welcome to the channel. This channel is dedicated to all things type 2 diabetes and reversing it naturally. We're going to talk type 2 diabetes reversal, intermittent fasting, carnivore, as well as other topics that'll make you all around healthier, fitter, and back to enjoying your life. Hi, I'm Dr. Kathy Shaw. I'm a Florida licensed chiropractic physician, PhD researcher, and professor of biochemistry and endocrinology. I've spent the last 15 years, along with teaching, helping type 2 diabetic patients reverse their diabetes and get their lives back. If this information sounds like something that will be helpful to you or other people, please share it. Help me reach more people. So share it with anyone that you think this information might help. Also, if you want to hear more information on this topic, please subscribe. Subscribe to the channel and let me know what you'd like to hear. So here's the typical scenario. You get diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. You slap on that continuous glucose monitor, get a prescription for some kind of medication, typically metformin, told to diet and exercise, whatever that means, and sent off to figure it all out. You go back to your doctor in a few months. When the medication stops working, your blood sugar goes back up, usually about 6 months. You'll probably get a higher dose, you'll get another medication, and this goes on, second, third, whatever. You're now on the type 2 diabetes train, heading full speed towards all the complications that type 2 diabetes is known for. The eye problems, kidney failure, amputations, heart problems, things like that. So we need to and can stop this train. We can turn it around before it even leaves the station. So we're going to talk about that. But before we can do that, there's some basic things you need to understand to do that. So first one is that blood sugar and type 2 diabetes are two different things. Blood sugar is what we use as a measurement. We use that because it's an easy thing to measure, but it's only a symptom. The heart of type 2 diabetes is insulin resistance. So your blood sugar is rising because you're insulin resistant. Insulin resistance is the basic problem. You've very likely been insulin resistant for about 10 years before actually being diagnosed as type 2 diabetic. Your insulin resistance is getting worse. That's why your blood sugar is rising. So an analogy for this is that of a house fire. Let's say somebody's house is burning down and the fire alarm's going off. We can focus on the fire alarm and shut it off. That's like getting your blood sugar down. That's the symptom, but we didn't stop the house from burning down. That's the root problem. That's the insulin resistance. Shutting off the fire alarm, shutting off the symptom, but not doing anything about the root problem. So dropping your blood sugar, but leaving your insulin resistance raging on is not going to stop the progression of diabetes. So we need to get that focus off of blood sugar and put the focus where it really belongs, on insulin resistance. If we focus on blood sugar, the symptom, the disease will keep progressing like the house keeps burning. And the type 2 diabetes will keep charging along to all the complications, the eyes, the heart problems, all that stuff. Controlling blood sugar won't prevent any one of these things. That's why we need to change our focus. So now that we understand type 2 diabetes equals insulin resistance, what's the cause of insulin resistance? And what do we do about it? So insulin is what actually causes insulin resistance. It's kind of like taking drugs. You know, the first hit gives you a high, but then you need more each time. That's resistance. So insulin increases insulin resistance, which increases insulin resistance, and so on. So here's what happens. You eat sugar, foods containing sugar, they go to the bloodstream. Your body releases insulin to get that sugar into the cells so the cells can make energy or whatever they need out of it. If you're eating so much sugar or have so much sugar that you release and need more and more insulin, the cells will become resistant to that signal. As they become resistant from getting bombarded with so much insulin It's going to take more and more and more to do the job, to get the sugar into the cell. As long as you're able to make that more and more and more, your blood sugar doesn't rise. You don't get diagnosed as type 2 yet. But your body will hit a threshold. You just can't make enough. You need so much to get the job done. You can't make that. You can't make that quantity. Then your blood sugar starts rising. So you've been resistant, but you hit a threshold where you just can't keep going up. So your insulin was lowering the blood sugar as long as it could, as long as you could make enough, but it's still increasing the resistance, making you need more and more and more. That's the root of everything. When you can't make that more and more and more, that's when you get diagnosed as diabetic. So when you understand this, you realize that we can't treat insulin resistance with insulin. It's kind of like treating an alcoholic with alcohol. Since this doesn't work, that's why we ended up calling type 2 diabetes a progressive chronic disease. We kept throwing insulin at insulin resistance and kept progressing. Type 2 really doesn't have to be that progressive chronic disease. It can be reversed, it can be cured in many cases, just not by conventional treatment. The conventional treatment just lets the condition progress. While people get worse, people get sicker. And it was years of watching that got me into doing this. So let's look at some key things that we need to know to reverse type 2 diabetes. So first one, the key to reversing type 2 diabetes is reducing, not increasing insulin. Remember the fire alarm story. Insulin might lower your blood sugar, that's shutting the fire alarm off, but the house fire or your diabetes is raging on. So that's one of the things we're going to talk about on this channel, lowering your insulin. Secondly, type 2 diabetes is a dietary disease, so it needs a dietary solution. Type 2 diabetes is not a shortage of medication, so more medication is not going to solve the problem. It's not a medication disease at all. Changing your food is what cures a dietary disease. You're not curing a dietary disease with drugs. All you're doing is suppressing the symptoms, back to shutting the fire alarm off. So that's another thing we're going to talk about. Third one is type 2 diabetes is curable. I've seen it in many patients over the last 15 years. It's not a chronic progressive disease. That label gets put on it, people give up and think that's their destiny. It's not. It can be turned around. We've done it. We've seen it. So first thing, one of the simplest ways to lower your insulin is by intermittent fasting. It's a very traditional way of eating. It's giving your cells a break from the insulin signal, from being bombarded with insulin. And if you think about the way we used to eat, traditionally, we ate 3 meals a day and nothing after dinner. That was intermittent fasting. We also didn't eat between meals. You ate your breakfast, didn't eat for the morning, ate lunch, didn't eat for the afternoon, ate dinner, didn't eat until breakfast the next morning. Even think about the name of that meal, break fast. When we were eating like that, there wasn't anywhere near the amount of type 2 diabetes that there is now. Now we just graze through all of our waking hours. So when you just look at it that way, look at a picture of people on the beach in 1950. Everybody looks healthy and strong and very different than today. That's when we were eating very differently than today. Also, fasting's been around for thousands of years. Every religion has some sort of fasting. It's nothing new. However, the unprecedented prevalence of type 2 diabetes is new over the past few decades. Okay, so let's talk about the real mechanism of fasting. When we eat, particularly carbs, sugars, we use insulin to get that fuel into the cell. So if we're grazing constantly, we're constantly bombarding those cells with that insulin signal because we're putting the the carbs, the fuel in there to make energy. And like anything that you're bombarded with, at a point you get resistant. If I'm yelling all the time, at a point you tune me out. But if I yelled once in a while, you'd probably take notice because I'm giving you a break from my yelling. So if we give the cells a break from that constant bombardment with insulin by not eating, the cells become sensitive to that insulin signal again. Simple as that. If I'm not yelling all the time, then I yell, then you notice. If I yell all the time, it's like, oh, there she goes again. That's the whole mechanism of fasting. Just breaking that vicious cycle of more insulin, more resistance, more insulin, and so on, as simple as that. And we'll talk about different mechanisms, different plans and ways of fasting. I'm not talking about week-long hunger strikes or anything like that. It could be simple, don't eat after dinner, things like that. So we'll get into all of that. Along with fasting, there's other ways of lowering your insulin. So we're going to talk about things like that. Things like reducing dietary refined carbohydrates. They're the molecules that fire up that insulin signal. If you eat a diet high in good fats, that can be very protective in a number of different ways for our bodies. So we're going to talk about that. Don't demonize fats like the media has for years. So we'll talk about that. There's some really cool science and everything with that. Fiber is huge. Fiber can make sort of this protective mesh on our digestive system and slow down the absorption of sugar. If we slow down the absorption, we can prevent the spikes and reduce our insulin demand. We're also going to talk about some neat little hacks like vinegar, particularly apple cider vinegar. That's a really nice little hack, easy hack for managing insulin levels. So we'll talk about that. We're also going to talk about some spices, some herbs, things like cinnamon, things about turmeric that are great for insulin, great for inflammation, tons of different things. They also make your food more interesting. So that's always kind of nice too. So I hope you'll join us on this journey. Please subscribe to the channel. If there's a particular topic you'd like to learn more about, I'd love to know. So let me know that in the comments and we'll use some of those ideas for future videos. Also, I'll drop a link in the comments for our free guide to starting intermittent fasting. So you can check that out and see if that's helpful. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video.